Battlefield 6 still has about a month until its launch, and while I'm looking forward to that, it's always fascinating to me to hear about what's still beyond. Surprisingly, we actually have not only a basically full picture of what to expect when it comes to the full launch, but also a solid understanding of what's to come after that with Season 1 launch. Recently, we saw multiple maps being leaked that all pointed towards one location, a Season 1 launch point. So while we'll be seeing a solid offering at launch, Season 1 looks to add a third of the game's offering in that post-launch first season right out of the gate. From 9 to 12 maps shortly after launch. Today, we're taking a look at what you need to know. So drop your thoughts, drop a like if you guys enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all things Battlefield 6 as we gear up for a launch in just over a month's time. I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, let's get into it. So firstly, where does this information today come from? This comes from kind of Battlefield itself. Battlefield Labs resumed in the last week or two, and since then, it's been showcasing a bit more content with an updated build pertaining to launch. However, the 1BF leaking group, who we've talked about before, they've leaked and data mined quite a bit of stuff already that we've seen leading up until this point. They were able to get map assets from the Labs client that has since been updated with newer testing items, and then even more stuff that links towards future content, pointing towards a Season 1. The assets themselves, data mined, are in some cases more complete than others, but these weren't also all entirely finished or put together. Like, you don't have a perfect map for every single one of these. Some have more things readily available than others. And as always, with leaked footage and information, anything directly showcasing the content, I can't feature in this video for copyright reasons. And if there was any question of the legitimacy of it, some of this stuff has already been taken down on places where EA has the ability to DMCA things, like Reddit, for example. But where applicable, if it's still up, links will be down there in the description below if you'd like to check it out for yourself. So the stuff for Season 1 that was leaked was 3 multiplayer maps here at this, or 2 for sure that seem to be coming, potentially a third though the final is not 100% confirmed. One called Badlands, one called Eastwood, and one called Downtown. All 3 apparently set in California based upon what data miners have mentioned, where Eastwood is the Hollywood Hills feeling, that sort of mansion and all. This is something we saw in some of the concept art. This is something that may very well tie in with what we see with the Battle Royale map and that teaser that we saw at the reveal itself, but it's a seemingly residential and more perhaps infantry-based map, something a bit more with a pop of color, being in a more just suburban area with this, something that's a bit more dense, but is going to be a map that seems to be all the more chaotic as well. Recently, we saw the fly-through leak of one of the spawn points of this, which actually leaked before the rest of these here, where that got a little bit of buzz for a little bit, but beyond that, we saw the map Badlands as well, that also being from the leaked concept art. For those that saw those concept art pieces, that was the more desert map with the oil drills in the fields. This map appearing, based off of leaked footage at least, linked down below, to be a larger scale map, perhaps one that is actually supporting everything. It seems like there are airstrips at points in the map, so very well perhaps indicating that we'll have things all the way up to jets, plus helicopters, tanks, down to your smaller infantry-based vehicles. But it seems like this is going to be a larger map here that is going to have larger scale combat, which big fan of that. Obviously, with only 3 maps here coming at launch supporting upwards of jet play, it's nice to see more of those being introduced relatively shortly after the launch. And then Downtown is, well, this is interesting because apparently this is either a remake, remaster, or some sort of various state or based off of the map Downtown from Battlefield Hardline. So for those that enjoyed Hardline, for those who enjoyed the map, it will be something that comes back here seemingly with Season 1, if the data mines are to be believed. So this is actually not half bad. Again, pending what we see in regards to the timing of this, which we'll touch on in just a second, we're getting a third of the launch maps again shortly after the launch in addition to the 9 already there. So I'm okay with that. I think that's a good starting point here at this, but how does it compare to prior DLCs in the Battlefield franchise? Because 3 could seem like a lot, could seem like a little, just depends on what game you're comparing it to. 2042's 0 Hour Season 1 offered 1 new map of exposure and a rework of Kaleidoscope, a new specialist, 2 weapons, 2 attachments, a new gadget, and 2 new vehicles. 5's Chapter 1 offered a conquest-only map of Panzerstorm, a new war story, and a practice range along with 5 new weapons. 1's They Shall Not Pass came with 2 new operations, 6 multiplayer maps, 6 weapons, 6 gadgets, and 3 vehicles. Hardline's Criminal Activity offered 4 maps, 5 weapons, 2 attachments, a gadget, and 2 vehicles. 4's China Rising came with 4 maps, 5 weapons, 2 gadgets, and 2 vehicles. And 3's Back to Karkand offered 4 maps, 10 weapons, and 4 vehicles. So the first introductory DLC or seasonal offering here for each of the last couple of Battlefield games has had a varying number of totals for the content. Now, obviously, we do not know what will end up coming alongside new soldiers, new factions, new weapons, new gadgets, new vehicles, whatever is added on top of these 3 multiplayer maps. But in terms of quantity, it seems like 3 is kind of middle of the pack here at this. We've had games where there haven't been as much, but we've also had games like 1 where we have double that in a DLC offering. However, one thing that you have to consider when we take a look at these comparisons is when they launched in relation to the launch of their game. Now, no launch date is specified just yet for Season 1 of Battlefield 6, but if we were to take a look at some of the comparisons here, you'll see that it varies, and again, kind of depending on how much actually comes with it. Now, 2042 was kind of an anomaly, I would say, because you had launch to Season 1, that was 209 days, just under 7 months' time. But again, it didn't really come along with a lot of different content. It had a reworked Kaleidoscope, a new map, and a couple of things like actually in terms of gunplay. But in regards to like content, it wasn't a whole ton in regards to how fast that came out. There's a lot of stuff post-launch that happened trying to fix up the game and get it in a more playable state that obviously took precedent. Battlefield 5, though, that Chapter 1 was 27 days after the launch here with that, but came with only 1 multiplayer map, a new war story, and all, again, smaller things like that. Battlefield 1, that 6 maps and other things, was 148 days after, or just under 5 months from the launch of Battlefield 1. Hardline's Criminal Activity was 98 days, or just over 3 months after the launch. 4's China Rising DLC was 36 days, and then 3's Back to Karkand was 43 days after launch. So you can see these DLCs launching anywhere from a month-ish post-launch to almost half a year or more. Unfortunately, it's a bit harder to nail down than some other games in the FPS space that are a bit more static in their content rollout, but given the emphasis on going all out this year, I'd kind of wager that we see something sooner rather than later, especially if we consider a large expansion is coming in spring of 2026 to close out that calendar year Q1 with a rumored release of the Battle Royale. Now, if that's the case, I also wouldn't be surprised if this coincides with another major launch of some kind for that, seasonally speaking at least. So that would potentially put a Season 1 launch of Battlefield 6 around the beginning of December, I would say, which again, makes sense logically speaking as well, given that you get the content out, you give enough time to monitor bugs and performance and make any adjustments if necessary before the developing teams go on holiday break through the new year. That's something that has plagued the Call of Duty franchise as a direct competitor for years now at this point, with every major integration coming to Warzone and that Season 1 launch on the COD side. Everything breaks around Christmas and then devs are gone for about a month at a time at that point that fixes aren't made. Additionally, just speculative in nature, I wouldn't be surprised if, pending the other content besides just maps, that we see this come sooner rather than later because, again, you take those comparisons of what we see from prior games and how quickly their first DLC launches, it really seems to coincide with content dependency. The shortest wait we had was 27 days from launch in Battlefield 5, but that was only for 1 multiplayer map. But to see 4 maps, you had Hardline, 4, and 3, all about 3 months or less, with 3 and 4 being only just over a month and about a month and a half after the launch of their respective games. So while 1's 6 maps took 5 months to be delivered, 3 maps for a Season 1 launch kind of makes sense in that month-ish window by comparison to what we've seen otherwise. Now, beyond that though, 3 and whatever ends up coming out in addition to those maps is going to set the precedent, I think, going forward. Obviously, a smooth launch is the most needed thing. Obviously, a good base game is needed. That part, I think, is already in place, but the longevity factor, that's where these seasons and the content coming with it is crucial. Maybe even as big as the initial launch. First impressions are everything. See 2042 if you don't agree, but holding those players while you have them is hugely important. So I think it's quite possible we see a shorter span between updates and seasons of content, though I still wouldn't expect them to be as frequent as things like, say, COD, because it's not an annualized title. There's certainly a 2 to 3 year plan for content with this game, as opposed to trying to fit 6 seasons in a year's time frame. But I think the release windows, the amount of content that can be granted with each season, that's kind of what sets the tone and separates an okay to decent post-launch to what is a great post-launch offering. So we'll have to wait and see, but as it stands right now, we have at least 3 maps coming with Season 1, it looks like, and they could be coming a little sooner than we may anticipate. So For now, that is where we're going to wrap it up. Just wanted to fill you guys in here on this newish information for Battlefield 6 and the other maps that you'll be seeing relatively soon. But for now, that's where we're going to wrap it up. So drop your thoughts down below. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful. And do me a favor, make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all things Battlefield 6 and other FPS content, Black Ops 7, Ark Raiders, and more. We've got you covered with all that. I'd love to have in the community if you'd like to join. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. See you later. Take care and peace.